Hey guys, welcome back to the Creative Plan Podcast Network. We're bringing you the best in RPGs, storytelling, and tabletop mayhem. I am Jim.
And I'm Kelly. And today we are diving into the shadowy, haunted, and dangerous world of Blades in the Dark. One of the coolest indie RPGs out there for narrative-rich, crew-based criminal activities, I would call it. You know?
It's all rogues.
Yeah, it's yeah.
It's being honest of what your adventure party really is. A bunch of murdering, killing, assassin thieves.
Exactly. I mean, not to put too fine a point on it. You're all criminals.
I mean, your group theme is a crew. What is your crew doing? So, in Blades of the Dark, written by John Harper, published by Evil Hat Productions, it is dropped back into 2017. I'm surprised I haven't been able to drag you into one of the game sessions because we've had a few.
Yeah, but it's always at a time I can't do because I work so early in the morning.
Because Blades in the Dark.
Exactly.
It's got to be done in the dark.
In the dark.
So it had a wildly successful Kickstarter, which we did back. And I got to admit, when John wrote this, he was giving out copies as please review beta copies. He basically had the community help him write this game, which is why it's so epically taken and understood by the community, because we do love it. Yeah. And he has hacks for all kinds of different settings now for it, so it's not just Blades in the Dark.
And I mean, they even in the book they post the webpage where you can get PDFs and stuff because they want you to play.
Exactly, and it is based on Powered by the Apocalypse RPG, so you have your playbooks for your characters. So it is meant to be almost a zero prep game from the session one, which is nice. You just hand out your playbooks for your individuals, you hand out the crew playbook, and then you just mash out your game of what is it you would like to commit crime-wise. And then we roll dice to find out.
What type of criminal do you want to be?
And that's a big one of part of the crew selection. So in your characters, you've got...
Maybe we should start with the setting.
We should. Oh, that's true. So,
I mean, let's give them an idea. I mean, of all right. Let's start with the setting. And if you haven't played Blades in the Dark yet, imagine this: a haunted industrial fantasy city where the sun has died. Ghosts roam the streets, and the only thing keeping society from falling apart is a shaky network of lightning barriers powered by human blood, and crime syndicates.
It's true, because one of the big things we've got in the city of Doskvol, also called Doskvol, which, by the way, does harken back to the inspiration of, if you've ever played Dishonored, that has a big influence into this game, except this is the post-apocalyptic version of that. So in this gritty, smoky, industrial world, we have that 1,000 years ago or so, a bunch of adventurers failed to save the world, and because of that, the sun disappeared.
Yep.
It blew up, it's gone, and the underworld is gone, so now anytime someone dies, ghosts come back.
Yeah, so of course you are surrounded by, ghosts and all manner of whatnot, but criminals.
And one of my...
It's a rough world.
It is.
You gotta fight hard.
Yeah, you gotta eke it. And literally part of the game mechanics they have for your crew is actually building your crew's network and eking out your neighborhood.
Mm-hmm. You gotta have territory.
You got to. And in Doskvol, you take choice of, you pick your crew if you want to be smugglers, assassins, cultists, even vigilantes, if you want to be semi-heroic. Mm-hmm. You can be the good guys that decide to be less bad.
You can be spies. You can be, all sorts of stuff.
So one thing, like Kelly touched on, is because ghosts no longer go to the afterlife, but ghosts are trapped on this mortal plane, the city of Doskvol has a lightning fence around it that keeps all the horrible apocalyptic things outside the city.
Now, that's not to say there are not any ghosts in the city. I mean...
Well,
but we're talking the really big Leviathan bads especially.
Mm-hmm. Because outside of the city, people go out and hunt the Leviathan like whales and take their demon blood to power
the
everything.
shield.
So it has that horrible Victorian, pre-Victorian oil
Yeah.
trade of going out and killing the whales and coming back to use evil demonic magic blood.
Yeah, you could like Peaky Blinders meets Dishonored meets Ghostbusters with just a dash of Lovecraftian horror. And all supported by some very elegant fiction horror mechanics.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I definitely love in the setting is when someone dies. Now, if your group is a bunch of assassins, this is important to you. The second they die, a bell tolls in the middle of town. And it's the death bell. And there's a certain group of basically not bad guy, good guy ghost hunters who follow a raven that comes out of the bell tower that slowly circles the town, and it finds the body and slowly zeroes in on it. So they can go out there and properly dispose of the body to make sure the spirit lingering behind is not left behind. Because it prevents problems later on, like, vampires.
So instead of the ravens and the bunkers being the choosers of the slain, it's like, hey, slain, here. We don't want this.
And let me see if I can find a picture of Doskvol. And of course, if you go to Evil Hat Games, there are plenty of printouts for your game. The actual 4 continents, because you can leave your main continent, which is a very teeny tiny continent.
Yeah, but leaving the city is fraught with hazards. So what's kind of cool, and they mention it in the intro, is like one of the things that they decided when they were creating the game was to create this environment that like heavy pressure, because it's not like you can just pick up and like hide out in some other place for like a period of time to let the heat die down. No, you're in a pressure cooker. Because you really can't go. You're kind of stuck. So you have all these different elements and they can come back to haunt you. Mm-hmm. So,
and I love how how they've got the beautiful dark black and white art to help accentuate things of, what all the pictures and all the classes are. Funny you said the heat. I passed the police department picture. They look like your typical London bobbies. Mm-hmm. One of the best descriptions I had of Doskvol is Victorian London meets Victorian Venice because of all the canals that go through it.
They, if I remember correctly, they tried to give the whole, it's like a combination of Victorian London, Venice, and like Paris. No, Prague.
Prague.
It was Prague.
Uh-huh.
To give this,
very old world
feel within, but of course then you have this whole apocalypse kind of thing going on. So it's a dark, gritty pressure cooker of a world.
Mm-hmm. And in regards to the Doskvol itself, they give a huge section of the book is just to setting each of the different districts, because part of the importance of the game is you will pick one of the districts as your guys' hangout, which is great.
And there's like a chart in there about turf and all that type of stuff. So
yeah, there basically is a character sheet just for your gang and what kind of basically flowchart of how you're building your gang out. So you get total choice in, do we want to just be hungry and grab turf, or do we want to specialize in things? Mm-hmm. But it is a great, dark, gritty game that is super easy to play. Just to give you an idea that the game mechanics are ridiculously easy. If you've played any Powered by the Apocalypse, you have the general idea, except in this one, you have a dice pool based on how much you have in your characteristics and your skills. You roll that many d6. If you roll a 1 to 3, bad things happen. Just like in Powered by the Apocalypse, if it was a 1 to 6 on your 2d6 pool, it would be where the GM will make a hard move on that. Mm-hmm. And if you roll a 4 to 5, it's a partial success, which means you get what you wanted, but there's a price. It's not going to be like break your leg price, but you could have been spotted by the blue coats, or you could have been spotted by some witnesses that work for one of the other cartels you're pissing off, because it's all about the gang wars at some point.
Yeah.
And then if you roll a 6, it's full success, which means the GM will look at the player and say, okay, it goes exactly as you planned. What's that look like? One thing I will point out with this RPG setting is it is a very player agency heavy RPG, in that the GM will be asking your players constantly for, what does this look like? How do you think that works out? Oh, you succeeded on breaking the safe. How did you do it? So your GM is constantly going to be throwing questions back at you.
Because it's the game frames every action in terms of position and effect. And are you risky? In a risky or desperate, out of control situation, what's the likely outcome if you succeed? And the GM doesn't roll dice. The players are the spotlight, and the mechanics support their dramatic storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Which I love the aspect in a lot of the Powered by the Apocalypse games, with it's a GM diceless side of the system where he has to roll no dice. He's just narrating how the fiction works. And one thing that I really like as a GM, we all know at your tabletop, when your D&D group gets together to plan a heist, they spend 3 hours going through the equipment section. They have plans of all plans of all plans, and then 5 minutes or less of real life game time, they get involved and the plan falls to crap. And then it just becomes a Scooby-Doo session of running through doors and throwing down grappling hooks. The beauty of this system is, instead of planning out the job in advance, you pick a basic plan. Your GM says, okay, you guys are leaving your headquarters. Are you carrying light gear so you look like you can blend in with everyone on the street? Medium gear, so you've got, a couple heavy duty items on you, maybe a crowbar hidden in your pant leg. You're geared up for more gear. Or are you going heavy load, which means you look like that D&D adventurer with the backpack that doesn't know what encumbrance means, and you're carrying everything, including the kitchen sink in the backpack, so much so the first police officer you see is going to ask, excuse me, sir, why do you have a grappling hook and rope on your back pocket? So you don't have to plan in advance. You just say how you're kitted out, which is really nice.
Well, flashbacks. It's like you're...
Exactly. And once you've decided how you've left your kit, you go on your adventure. And you don't even have to pick your gear in advance.
No,
you pick
you can do
gear
it then.
At the moment you're needing it, which is beautiful, because you can choose to have that rifle or that ladder.
And with another system that I played that did that, it's great. It's like, oh no, I happen to have an empty slot on my character sheet that I didn't pick anything at the time. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, well, what do you know? I happen to have dynamite on me.
There you go. and that's one of the really nice things is you can decide after the fact. You don't have to front load your whole adventure.
Yeah, it's like spending a penny, but...
And as you said it just a second ago, the flashback metric. You can choose to take a stress and do a flashback, which we love from every heist and leverage style show, where you get the whoopity 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 whoopity.
That's how it really happened.
And then you go back and you role play the flashback, and you may do a skill check or two to see how it worked out. And then you flash back to the present, and we find out how the flashback worked. Did you get that gondola driver to leave their boat parked under the window that's there over the canal? Did you convince that maid to leave in the wheelbarrow in the garden the such and such item that's going to be key to succeeding with the heist? Mm-hmm. And one thing that's nice with the Game Master is you tell the players when they make a roll, is this a desperate situation? Is it a dangerous situation? Is it just a situation? Nothing that you're going to horribly die. So you can choose before you roll how bad things are going to roll out. Of course, there's always going to be
consequences. Yes.
There's always going to be conditions and trauma conditions. You have the supernatural enact. And one thing I love as a GM is this was one of the first games that really hammered home progression clocks. It's a little circle that you hashtag like a pizza pie, and you set out to, every time they fail or succeed, depending on what the clock is for. So the clock could be 6 slots for the guards coming. So if the group doesn't get their ass in the building quick enough, the guards will notice them. And as they roll and they fail, you fill in that little circle. And as soon as the circle is full, it's a countdown timer like we see in video games nowadays, where you see that little bar shrinking, where you have to do it before the bar is done or you're hosed.
Or you fail.
Or it could be something successful, like some of the careers actually can craft things. And you can't craft it all at once, but you can use your downtime to craft and do a little progress and slowly fill in the clock to your evil super duper Ghostbuster ghost trap. Because there actually is a career for ghost hunting. But that's one thing I love is there are so many options in play, that especially with the flashback mechanic, which I've stolen for so many other games now. Like in Genesis, I totally will let you use a destiny point for a flashback.
Exactly. It was like spending a penny to, oh yeah, this, don't you remember I did this before we did this, and so I still have it on me.
And one of the nice things is you have for doing different progression with the clocks for like a chase scene. If you guys can get, like, think of the old 4th edition D&D when you guys had to get 3 successes before 2 failures, and you could see how you progress along the successes. So the actions are fairly simple. So usually the GM will tell you if it's a controlled action, a risky action, or a desperate action, which totally will tell your players if they roll a 1 or 3, you know it's going to be bad. If it's a desperate action, you're probably going to take some severe trauma. And players can always take, one thing I love is called the devil's bargain. So a PC can totally look and decide to take the chance that you want to make a deal with the GM just to get a little extra push on your skill checks. And then the GM will tell you right off the bat exactly what will happen if this goes bad. So the action system is super easy. It's basically you get a dice for every one of your rating dots. You get a dice for every assistant. So when your friends say, I'm going to chip in, you look at the GM looks at the other players and say, okay, so you're there if there's any fallout from this roll. And they go, gulp. And
I'm a distraction.
And then you get a DC for any push, because you can always push yourself to be better, and attempt a devil's bargain. Then you go ahead and make your roll, and you decide whether it's a 1 through 3, which means you're in trouble, 4 or 5, which means, okay, you succeeded, but here's the price, or a 6, and you basically get to brag with all of your friends how awesome that move was, especially if you're totally a smooth criminal. And one thing I love with this system is, for those who've played Fate, you'll totally recognize the harm system as the consequences from Fate, where instead of taking damage, you can take a 3, 2, or 1 harm that breaks down to here's what's going on. And one thing I like is there is, in fact, a death spiral to your first harm. You need help. You just have reduced effects. If you have your second harm, you get 1 dice less in any action because you're hurting. And then if you get 3, you need help. You're hurt. So you can always take those consequences, and if you have armor, you can reduce damage, which is always a nice thing. And of course, death is a thing in this game mechanic. So if you suffer a level 4 harm, you do die. So that is totally a thing. But the nice thing in the system is it has basic breakdowns for any bit of roguish play you want to do, including some light PvP rules, which is basically just contested. And when it comes to cash, it refers to coin as just coin. And you get like 1 coin, 2 coin, 3 coin. It's not a actual denomination of coins. It's a amount of coins. So it keeps, purchasing in cash is a very simple mechanic. And of course, you play a mini faction game with your groups, where you basically try to break down you'll have a friendly group and an unfriendly group at the very get-go, which is nice. So the big thing as a player is you're going to be dealing with stress. And stress is basically what your hit points are. When your character maxes out on stress, there will be consequences. One nice thing in this game is your character can cool off. There is a metric that when you stress out too much...
Downtime,
yep.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody can...
You heal, you can train, craft items. Indulge in vice to reduce stress.
Vice is a very important thing. Vice is how you basically blow off steam after all the caper movies we see. They go for shawarma.
It's like my character Val from Scion.
Yep.
She was a libertine, so she would engage in certain vices to get back.
And when you make a character, there's these 7 character creation styles. You've got the cutter, who are good at winning fights with violence, with intimidation. There's the hound, that are good at tracking things down, and also they're really good at sniping.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why I like the hounds.
There's the leech, who is good with using the alchemy and wrecking stuff with sabotage.
Saboteur.
They wear wood shoes. You have the lurk, which are good at sneaky and breaking and entering. And you have the slide, which is the good social subterfuge player. They're basically your face man. Mm-hmm. And then you have the spider, who is the mastermind, who basically is all about pushing his team around like a spider tugging on the webs. And then you've got the scary one, which is the whisper.
Yeah.
They're the magical one that deal with ghosts and creepy things. Mm-hmm. So you'd pick your playbook. You would just circle which heritage you want. It's mostly narrative. It's not actually mechanical. Then you would pick what background you come from. Then you would assign 4 of your dots. You would pick your special abilities, which on your playbooks are really easy. You would pick 1 friend in the group and one NPC rival, so that automatically gives your GM 3 to 4 good guys and 3 to 4 bad guys to use during the adventure. Basically, it's like Jimmy the Baker, Johnny the Fence. And as your GM, you write down who your team's allies and enemies are, so you can totally throw them into the mix. Because it's the first time somebody rolls a failure, you totally say Timmy the Pickpocket's watching this and goes running off to go snitch on your ass. Because he's your rival.
It's like, you did him dirty earlier, some other time, and
yep.
He remembers.
Then you choose your vice, which is either faith, gambling, luxury, obligation, pleasure, stupor, or weird. And when they say weird in Doskvol, they mean weird. It could be you go to spirit fights or ghost races, all kinds of creepy things. And as you set out, all of your actions are based on, this one page gives you a list of all your actions. So you can command when you want someone to do what you say, or as it says, command with obedience. You can consort. You can socialize with friends and contracts. When you finesse, you employ manipulation and subtle misdirection. You might pick someone's pockets, or you might handle the controls of a vehicle. Then you can hunt, which is quite easily to target or discover the location of something. You can prowl, which uses your sneakiness. You can skirmish, which is totally meant to brawl, wrestle, or mix it up. Or you can study, to look at documents, read the room like Sherlock Holmes. Or you can survey, which will help in situations to anticipate outcomes, which means you can totally use survey to spot trouble before it happens. Or you can sway, which means influencing people with guile, charm, or argument.
I thought intimidate. Which one is intimidation then? Would that be?
That would be sway, because that could be done
exactly. So intimidate.
See, consort is friends and contacts, so it's more of a nice schmooze. And then, of course, you can tinker with devices and mechanisms, or flat out wreck, which is use savage force to break shit. So each of the characters, as I said, the playbooks will give you many different things, like just to give you an idea on your friends or rivals. The cutter has an option to have Marlene, a pugilist, perhaps a pit fighter down at the docks, or a boxing coach who trained you. And all you do on the character sheet will circle the up arrow or the down arrow to say whether they're your friend or your enemy, which makes things really nice. And one thing with Blades in the Dark is, as a GM, it is very narrative, because you're going to be constantly asking your players, what something looks like. How does it feel? What does this attack look like? How does their blade, come out of the holster to slice someone? So it's very nice in bringing your players into it. And one thing with like any Power by the Apocalypse game that's nice is your action is not a single action. It's actually a number of actions. So say you see a bunch of enemies in the alleyway and you want to go take them out. Your one roll is that action. It's the entire encounter that happens. One thing that you do have to be careful in this series is make sure your players are sharing the spotlight. As a GM, a Master of Ceremonies and Director, you need to make sure that the spotlight is moving around the table fairly with good equity. But it is nice to have your players just know they've got player agency and can cut loose and go for as crazy as they want.
Yeah, and what's kind of nice is because the more style of this game is sort of more like, I think they used the term, described it as like TV show.
Mm-hmm.
It's like an episode. So it's can often be standalone. It's like each episode has a plot, like
it's got its own 3-act or 5-act structure.
Yeah, that it's got, okay, we're doing this plan, and that's the whole plan. I mean, you can have overarching themes like on TV shows and stuff, but it's like, yeah, so each session is almost like can be self-contained. I mean, you can still have a campaign with them, mm-hmm. but it's designed to be, okay, so this week, what are we up to this week? Well, we're going to nick something from the,
Yep. And it's nice with zero prep for the GM. You basically just have to keep control of the setting and remember who's what and where. And the crew can show up any day and the GM will basically say, okay, guys, what's your heist for this week? And somebody will throw out some ideas. And think about your group as they're in their hideout. They're going over that table, throwing newspapers and things out there saying, hey, George with his avocados are bad right now. He's selling bad avocados to the group. Let's steal the good avocados and give them to the people for the avocado toast.
Oh, God.
Hey, these are the things you can come up with on the pinch.
Or, something more evocative of this world.
This is true.
Because, I mean, the vibe of the
it's very dark.
Doskvol is, it's that dark, it's like gritty, it's, you have that high tension, but
it's dark like Les Mis. It does. It has that Les Mis feel.
I mean, there's like, it's like, and then you're like swimming in this darkness, and it's like, so you can be that bad. You're like where you can't in regular life. It's like that's why I like playing characters that are not like me. Typically,
it's good catharsis.
It's like, oh yes, you can actually tell. Seek revenge, yay! But
and I will touch, since I was flipping through it on the crew creation theme. So just to give you an idea of the different theme your crews can be, and of course you can always play outside the crew. You can pick something different this week. But you have assassins, killers for hire, bravos, which is usually one of the most most popular one I've noticed. Everybody picks bravos because you're street thugs, you're Peaky Blinders.
Yeah.
That you're the mercenaries and thugs that do whatever, period. Then you've got the cults. There's many acolytes of forgotten gods in this world, which totally, if you want to do a Dishonored game, you could totally do a Dishonored cult of the void. Mm-hmm. Then you've got the hawkers, which are the vice dealers, which can get really dark and dirty, by the way. Use your roses and thorns for that kind of game. When you are the ones who sell the vice in this dark and dingy place, it can go very dark.
Yeah.
Then you've got the shadows, which I've noticed is the second most popular game, which is the thieves and spies. Mm-hmm. And then the smugglers, which is the third most popular one I've noticed, is the contraband transporters. We had a group that specialized in smuggling, basically kidnappers. They actually opted last Halloween to be a group of kidnappers. Oh, so their crime was to kidnap a crime boss just getting out of jail. And it ended up going very well.
They were hired to do this.
They were hired to do this, and they managed to do it perfect. There was a, stagecoach ride and a couple gondola rides and threw a guy into a fishing barge full of fish ride. It was very, very unpleasant.
Very aromatic.
Yep. But it gives you a definite
Odoriferous.
great job of creating your guys' crew. So the crew itself is a character, which, as you can see here, you have a flow chart for your character that starts with you have a layer, and then you'll expand out as you level up.
Yeah, turf and all sorts of,
And as you build your groups, they have their own upgrades that you want. They've got contacts, they've got hunting grounds. So it's a very great mini game within the game, which is great. And of course, it's got lots of charts to help your GM out in case you're in a pinch, because they do know that you're going to be doing this on the fly. So they give the GM plenty of power in the form of D6 charts, where you'll basically roll 2d6 and get a whole bunch of great inspiration for the game. So that way, just in case you're stymied for ideas, just in case, like as you can see, the smugglers start with a boat or a carriage. And then they'll try to
modified boat.
Then they'll try to turn a carriage into a boat by driving it to the canal. And when it comes to the score, it's basically a mini game before the actual game that I always tell everyone to visualize. There you are in your hideout around the table. And you throw out you choose basically one of 6 choices. Are you going to assault someone? Are you going to deceive someone? Are you going to stealth something? Are you going to occult something? Because sometimes you just got to occult some shit. Are you going to socialize something? Or are you going to transport something? Which definitely, if you notice, those go hand in hand with the actual careers for the group. And like I said before, you don't have to stick to just what your career is. You can opt to do something different from time to time, which is really nice. And then you do your mini game, you do some background history to see what you know about the score. You could totally set up like, I'm going to research this before we go, and then you start the adventure. There's no wasted time pre-gaming. It's all, let's do it at the time of the game. And then you guys will go and do the game, and basically the one thing you need to worry about is generating heat, which is one thing that is bad for your group. It's the group equivalent of stress, because if you get too much heat, somebody pays the cops to come after you.
And every time you pull a job, the heat on your crew rises. Eventually, you'll be wanted by the blue coats, or worse. It creates a living world where the player's choices echo long after we stop rolling dice.
Yep.
I mean, oh look, you now have a new nemesis.
And during downtime, it can totally be hey, guess what? That guy you robbed, well, he just, had a son who's got his own crew, and now he's hunting you. But one thing I do love in the game is when you generate heat, you can actually have a stable of characters. You can retire one of your characters and say he went off to jail to burn off heat for the group.
Well, that's true.
And the group can actually choose next week to spring him out of the clink. So the next thing would be a smuggle someone out of jail mission, or use a lurk mission to get him out of jail.
And that, again, like sometimes when you have that one player, like, my sister's out of town, right now. If I was like, oh, well, obviously they got, arrested, so we're going to go ahead and try and free her.
So if you want to reduce your wanted level, the only way to do it is by getting someone incarcerated, which I love they actually have a prison table for once you go into prison, how it would be to get allies in prison. So if you wanted, you could be the guy on cell block doing, Blades in Dark is the new orange.
Oh, God.
And basically earn, you can pay off guards. It has actual mini game in there to that effect of, here's what we're going to do. But this is a great game for both short-term games and long-term games. I love how they use the different ways of, all the player has to say is, I'm going to indulge my vice and roll a dice to see just how long it took them to pay off that stress so they can come back next time fresh.
And it's collaborative storytelling.
Oh,
So-
it's collaborative at its top. It's like some of the other Powered by the Apocalypse games that we've played, like Avatar Legends,
I
where
like that one.
your players will be asked to bring in so much into the game. And on a side note, one thing I do like about this game is, say a player dies. Well, just in case the player dies, death is not the end.
Because of course there are ghosts.
Because the strange forces in Doskvol actually give you options for your players. There is a character playbook for a vampire, which in this case is not a bloodsucker made by another bloodsucker, made by somebody who was around during the crucifixion. He is actually a spirit of the dead animating an undead corpse. It does require life force energy to keep alive, which is where the vampire part comes in. But there's nothing cooler than having a bunch of crew robbing somebody's house and finding out they're the unholy undead. You can also come back as other undead too, which is nice. So you could literally have a spirit in the group that's your ghost scout for a while.
That would be cool. I would be totally down playing a ghost. I loved playing one in, Iron Kingdoms.
And you also have the hull, which is basically a spirit animating a spark-crafted frame. So it's basically something that can hold a spirit and walk. Which I thought was really cool that they give those options. And then there's because my fingers won't flip the book correctly, the ghost. Which is, I'm sorry, every GM should keep this character sheet on hand, because if someone dies, and you know no one plans to die, but somebody's going to die, you just hand them the sheet. And you, of course, warn your party that crow is circling around, and the crow is coming. So all I gotta say is definitely give this game a chance. There is so much that you can enjoy in this game. Like I said, there are tons of maps that you can print up. There on the Evil Hat website, there's tons of printables that you can print up here, including all the playbooks. They give those totally free. Only one person really needs the book. But you have tons of great tables at the very back that you can totally use. One thing I will throw out there for GMs that are not used to Powered by the Apocalypse and a bunch of other games that are coming along those titles, there is no monster manual. The bad guys are basically thugs with guns and knives, and your players will roll their ability. If they succeed with consequence, they got punched and stabbed or cut up. Something related to what you narrate these bad guys have. There's no actual stats for the vampire other than you saw what the vampire's abilities are. So as a GM, you have narrative freeness to just go crazy with it or go as little crazy as you want. Does that flower maiden have a poison needle behind her, just in case? Those steel hat pins that can kill a man. So don't be afraid as a GM to just take vague ideas for your encounters and literally tell your players, okay, you see these two thugs are at the door ready to kick it in and go after you guys. Okay, you guys didn't escape in time. You rolled a 3. Guess what? They caught you and they start attacking you. What weapons did they bring? And you can always ask your players to tell you what they brought and start giving them effects based on that.
Billy clubs.
You could have them, they're here to capture you alive and they're just going to billy club you. One of the things I do love is they have a table in here for newspaper prints, which if you're ever needing it for any type of game, they've got a bunch of examples of different scores you can throw at your group, as well as some complications and which factions are involved.
Well, even at the beginning of the book, they actually have suggestions of TV shows,
Yep.
movies, even music that they feel are evocative of the game and the setting to give you that feeling,
Exactly.
to draw you in. They want this immersive experience. I mean, think about playing. I mean, it would be kind of cool. You played in a room that's like partially dark.
Get it?
You know, like 10 candles, but not quite as dark.
You get that crime vibe. Because remember, the sun is out. There's a lightning shield that protects the city from all kinds of creepy things out there. And there's some creepy immortal guy that's in charge of everything.
Yeah.
Who's okay with it being just like it is.
Yeah, like those old, like, globes that you could get at Spencer's. You touch it and the lightning.
The plasma globes.
That light, along with like electric candles, because we don't want to.
Yep.
I mean, you could totally make it a whole, experience if you wanted to. It lends itself to that. You know.
There is a ton more as well, because the final iteration of this game system became the Forged in the Dark game system, which is nice because he did evolve this from Powered by the Apocalypse at first and then added some Fate stuff to it. Mm-hmm. And then it basically became Forged in the Dark as the new game system, which is nice. And there are other games that use the Forged in the Dark or have added onto it, because he is totally willing to say, please, take my baby, make it your own, and let's all enjoy gaming. Which, that's a huge thing that I love about it, because there's the Band of Blades is the same game system, except you're a last legion marching away from an undead horror.
Whereas, because the Blades in the Dark, if you want to play really heroic and it's like, this may not be the game.
Yes, this is.
If you like very strategic tactics and altruistic brave heroism and stuff, this may not be the game.
This one, as I've summed it up to players, is Ripper Street, classic BBC show, mm-hmm. Peaky Blinders, and Les Mis. Because Les Mis pulls you to the very dark side.
Yeah, but then you throw a little Carnival Row in.
Yes, that would be a good one.
That steampunk, dystopian, mm-hmm. but of course instead of the Fae, you have ghosts and you have
demons.
But you have that dark,
It's a very overtone of dark and oppressiveness, because you guys are fighting for survival.
And Dishonored, like that.
Definitely Dishonored.
Like steampunk kind of Lovecraftian.
Oh, I would love to steal a bunch of Dishonored things like the Blood Plague and other things like that would totally fit in this game. If you put this book and Dishonored together, you'd have a great campaign right there.
Yeah. So it's nice that they're, have it for other.
Yep. And like I said, there's Band of Blades, there's Scum and Villainy, and Girl by Moonlight that also use the same system for Forged in the Dark. So if you are interested, please check out Blades in the Dark. Let us know what your favorite heist or score is. Got to remember to call it just a score in case you're smuggling some kind of cool drug. And you could craft any kind of Victorian era street thugs, any Dickens book, basically.
Yeah, and if you have, like, anybody listening, if you have your own crew in Doskvol who've played this game, tell us what your wildest score or favorite moment was. We'd love to hear it.
Yes, please, because we are fans of games like this to let your players go crazy. Everything is better when you can do big damn actions instead of itty bitty I swing my sword.
Yeah, because there's like times when you hear about some other, I'm like, oh my god, I never thought of that. That's brilliant.
I have seen some amazing flashbacks pulled in games, which is why I've totally said any game can use the flashback mechanic, because it really does make it like those shows like Leverage or any of the Ocean's movies where you get to have that great, wait a minute, we just got screwed, but wait, we did a flashback.
Yeah, it was a double cross.
And the nice thing is the game mechanic has stress on your characters, so there's no ridiculous number of flashbacks. It's when they do a flashback, it's important, and here's why. And then you roll dice to see if the action followed through. Because it sucks when you do a flashback and it fails, and you find out it was a double cross.
Yeah, okay. Well, I think that's going to do it for today's review. Thank you guys for joining us here on the Creative Play In Podcast Network. Don't forget to follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Support us on Patreon if you'd like to play in a future game. And leave us a review. I mean, it helps more gamers find the show. I mean...
Yes, please. And check us out on Patreon as well. We've got a lot of polls going right now for a new up-and-coming Saturday night Realms of Not Terranoth game. Because it's not Terranoth. It sounds like they're going to go very dark and evil.
Oh, gee, maybe Blades in the Dark would be good.
Well, they wanted to do Genesis system.
Genesis. Okay.
Yes. So it's going to be a very fantasy, dark, maybe Relic Hunter kind of game.
Okay.
I'm still waiting for the polls to find out. So check out our Patreon over at patreon.com/CPPN, and feel free to anytime drop us a message at creativeplaypodcastnet@gmail.com. We definitely want your questions so we can answer them.
Mm-hmm.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you for listening.
Oh, and until next time, stay sharp, stay dangerous. Oh, and make sure you check your ghost traps before the next job.
Alrighty, guys. Thank you for listening.